Okay, hi everyone, and you're very welcome to the HEA ESD Spotlight Series. We're in week 10 of the Spotlight Series today, and I'm delighted that MTU we're going to be presenting today. My name is Mark Kelly. I'm currently on secondment with the Higher Education Authority as a National Policy Advisor on ESD. Just a couple of rules of engagement for today. Please keep your microphones on mute. The session is being recorded and will be available on the National Resource Hub at this link, early next week. We'll have Q&A at the end, which I'll facilitate. So please post any comments or questions that you have in the chat or the Q&A, and I'll be keeping an eye on that throughout the session. So as I said, we're delighted that we've Munster Technological University presenting and sharing just some of their ESD practice today. So I'm going to hand over to Niamh Power to host the event. Thanks, Niamh.
Yeah, brilliant. So hello everyone, I'm Dr. Niamh Power. My background is I am a civil and environmental engineer, but after a long time of banging my head off that drum, I realised that me on my own, we cannot do anything on our own. So we and a number of colleagues across the university, we started saying, how can we get a university-wide approach for including sustainability within our university and within our curriculum? So what we're going to show you today is a little bit about the background of how MTU is kind of getting this university-wide approach, and we'll showcase some of the best examples. We'll show you the journey of what we're doing. The journey isn't finished yet. We're still on this journey, but it's really nice to kind of give you a capture of where we've come from. So when we started at university level, one of the things that we tried to look at is, well, what are we trying to achieve? What is MTU trying to look at? And what we determined was that we were trying to build a sustainable future in higher education. And to do that, we wanted to put our students at the centre of what we were doing. So we had a number of workshops. We started looking at what our graduates need, etc. And we really started saying, right, what is it that our students need for when they go out into the workforce to ensure that they are meeting the needs of the future and that their education is providing them with the adequate skills. So in terms of our starting the journey, and it is a journey, we're not there, we're not finished yet, but the journey to date, and the very first thing that really kicked off it was MTU's strategic plan. So MTU, when it was officially formed, we were Institute of Technology of Tralee and we were Cork Institute of Technology. When we came together, we came up with a strategic plan as a university. And within the strategic plan, one of the strategic enablers here is sustainability and the UN SDGs. And that policy document is extremely important to us because within that document, it talks about curriculum, it talked about our students getting skills, and it really then gave us a huge amount of confidence of what we were doing, number one, but two, it means that we were getting buy-in from senior management of where we wanted to go. The next step along the journey was embedding sustainability within policy. So, for example, when we have the design and approval of programs to lead into major awards, it specifically now calls out sustainability. So if you're designing or you're getting a new program, you now formally have to address sustainability within the program design. And two, the procedure as well. So the procedure of how we actually approve programs and the design of programs now has to have a key element there on how sustainability is factored within that. So they were the first three main documents on our journey to getting a university-wide approach. However, that continued to develop a curriculum framework. So MTU, like a number of universities, and I can see a number of colleagues here on the call, we're involved in the Tutor programme. And in the Tutor programme, we had a curriculum framework that was a nationally agreed curriculum framework and had 6 different pillars, one of which was sustainability. In MTU, we took that curriculum framework, but we then developed on it to make sure it got an MTU lens. We looked at the ESD, we looked at what we wanted the graduates, and we created a beautiful document that went through academic council. And when I went to Academic Council and within the document, it talks about this student-centred approach. It highlights the attributes that the graduates will want, what are guiding pillars, and it all comes around and encompasses in the university culture and an inclusive curriculum. So the curriculum framework then gives us a structure to put that student-centred approach to the fore. Within the curriculum framework itself, it starts looking at the number of different guiding principles, but within that, it specifically called out the different types of competencies that we want our students to gather. So when we talk about competencies, I know a lot of people will be familiar with this particular document here. It's the UNESCO document. The UNESCO document is absolutely fantastic in that if you are trying to embed sustainability within the curriculum, and if you don't quite know where exactly to start, I think this document is excellent because it gives you learning objectives, it gives you indicative content, and it's a really wonderful document. In terms of competencies, though, we also have the Green Comp document, which again shows the different competencies that the students are developing. So within MTU, when we talk about competencies, it is specifically written within our curriculum framework that it's not just giving people knowledge or putting in a slide that covers sustainability and a tick box exercise. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking to our students. We're looking at putting them in the centre and ensuring that they get the competencies that they need when they graduate. So in terms of the competencies, we didn't just leave it as the curriculum framework. We also developed a university-wide strategy for sustainability. So this was launched just in April, so it's a very new strategy from 2025 to 2035. And the sustainability strategy is looking at the education, but also looking at the university as a whole, because we understand from the curriculum framework that the students need to see the university culture of sustainability, that we can't explain to students what best practice is if the university isn't following it. So we have a sustainability strategy, and in the sustainability strategy, it's about the various different levels of the university all working together, from the executive of the university to the vice president, to your Education for Sustainable Development group, to the Green Campus, all of these working together. But what's particularly strong about our sustainability strategy is that within that, we have identified 100 key action points, and there has been a person in charge for each of those. So the person might be the Dean of Faculty, okay, or it might be the Dean of, might be the VP, or it might be Building and Estates. So every single action point has a designated responsible person. And when we go to the strategy, there's specific ones there. There's specific action points for the training of staff and also to ensure that sustainability is within the curriculum for the students. So what's wonderful about this is that the strategy is backed up and we have people who are put in as responsible for it. So that gives us a huge amount of confidence that, you know, we're trying to have that university-wide approach across all the different disciplines. The next step of our journey then is the faculty review process. So the faculty enhancement review process, or programmatic review, is what we're starting to embark upon at currently. So we have a number of faculties going through the faculty enhancement review process within the next academic year. And within this document and within this review processes, all the different programme areas have to verify and show that they are complying with the curriculum framework and ESD implementation. So this is really important. It shows that it's coming full circle, and it's showing that, like all these policies and procedures, we actually have to show that they're coming into force. We're already starting to see the benefits of this. So at university-wide, the registrar, for example, is now looking at putting in CPD training courses to make sure that people are familiar with their curriculum framework and all the different pillars of the framework. education for sustainable development is one of those key pillars within the framework, and we're looking at how we can best roll out that training across the university. So in terms of what we're doing then and how we're looking at it, there's so many different projects that we can't showcase them all here today. We've got a number of them coming up. But we're looking at how we can improve engagement within the classroom. And that can be within the classroom directly, or also taking students outside the classroom to engage in practical examples, whether it be going on down to the river to collect water samples, to doing walking tours across the university, to making sure that we do, environmental stewardship. We're looking at how we can develop knowledge and skills and how we can impart that knowledge and skills. We know our curriculum framework is all about how we can get the competencies in terms of the UNESCO competencies and the Green competencies. And one of the key elements of that is how we can incorporate that within the assessments. So again, the faculty enhancement review will be looking at how we can assess some of these competencies that the students are engaging. And the last but not least is how we can map ESD from the various different programs. There is a kind of acknowledge there that most programs won't be able to hit every single ESD sustainable development goal unless the program is in sustainability, of course, but trying to make sure that they cover a sufficient number of them, and also that the ones that they are covering are appropriate for their discipline specific. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to move the university in a way that we are ensuring that this is not a box ticking exercise. Because the one thing that we have found before is that depending on which assessment that you use, it can be very much, oh yeah, box ticks. We don't want a situation where someone goes, oh, right, well, Niamh looks after sustainability, so that's fine. We don't have to look at it again. We're looking at how we can embed it at programme level, but consistently throughout the whole process. So that's just give you a quick overview of how we're looking at an MTU-wide approach and the journey that we have taken so far. So the journey was really starting off from get it within the strategic plan, get it into policies, procedures, your curriculum framework, right up to how it's going to be rolled out in the faculty enhancement review process. So thanks very much for listening to me. I'm just going to stop sharing that. The time we were told to do was at a 12-minute presentation, so I think I'm on time. But I said we've got a huge amount of very good case studies and best practice across the place. So I'm going to hand you over to two of my colleagues, Maria and Aisling. Do you want to share your screen there, and do you want to show some of the work that you are doing on curriculum change and curriculum design?
Thanks very much, Niamh. Can you see our slides okay?
Yeah, I can see it perfectly.
All right.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Niamh, and thanks everybody for the opportunity to share the work that we're doing on our project. You can see the name there. We're a student staff team. So there's myself and Maria from two programs within the Department of Process, Energy and Transport Engineering. And we had 4 student team members then, 2 from each of our programs, Chemical and Biopharmaceutical Engineering and Sustainable Energy Engineering. Now, the student team members are in exam period, let's say, at the moment. So we've got some embedded video that Maria is going to show you in a little bit. So if we move on then, just to give you a bit of a background to our project, it's funded under SATL. It's a learning enhancement project, and this is kind of a follow-on project from a project we did in the first semester of 23-24, where we almost started just to test out our look at how we could rapidly renew our curricula for sustainability. And our current project then is running for 2 years. So we're very much focusing on engineering this year, but we're hoping then to expand across disciplines from what we've learned next year within the university. So you can see on the left-hand side there's our objectives, if you like, in terms of what we want to achieve. And the last one then, we believe it's very important, if you're going to make all of these changes at the end of the day, how do you measure the impact? And on the right-hand side there, you can see our work packages, if you like. There's a lot that we could talk about, but we're just trying to give you a snapshot of some of the work that we've done so far. So I'm going to pass over to Maria now.
Yep. Hi, thanks. So I'm going to take you through some of the work we've been engaging in since September. So as Niamh mentioned about the EU Sustainability Competency Framework on Green Comp, we've been looking at piloting that within modules across the programme. We are lucky that we have an interdisciplinary module that's delivered to both programmes for our students. So we were able to embed it into that module and also into another module on engineering sustainability, but also the core staff were to make them familiar with it and to look at the feasibility of using the green competencies within their own modules. We were very lucky last November to be able to take part in a Concern World Cafe on climate justice, biodiversity, and actually at the time, the upcoming elections. So three of our student team members were able to facilitate as part of that, and they had the experience of facilitating a very diverse, there was 90 students involved. There was 4 disciplines. So there was sustainable energy engineering, chemical and biopharmaceutical engineering, but we also had visual communication students and community development students and concern staff. So it was really a transdisciplinary project, and the students really, they'll talk to you more, you'll see in the videos a bit about that. Aisling and I have been engaged in the National Forum Digital Badges on embedding the SDGs and sustainability in the curriculum. Another thing we're going to talk to you a bit about today is the student module redesign process. So we're looking at how to bring sustainability into modules. And one option we're going to look at is an existing module. So the students looked at this and we're going to show you some of their opinions on it. Similar again, and following on from some of that student co-creating of content from Trinity's presentation last week. So they hosted, and you can see some of the pictures there. So the students actually hosted an education for sustainability workshop with staff, looking at challenges, benefits, resources required and stuff like that for embedding sustainability. And we're continuing to survey both staff and students as we get new students in each year to see what we can. So this one I thought I might talk to you about is where they're looking at redesigning the first year module. So as CIT, so MTU Cork now, we have a module that all first years take in semester 1. So it's called the Creativity, Innovation, Teamwork. So all students do it. You can see there it's 119 programs. So it's a really useful resource, we'll say, to already drop in sustainability into. And that's what we're looking at with the students. And it's delivered in all different disciplines differently, but it is the same kind of core content. And the students have an experience of doing that module because the students on our project are second and third year students. So they will have done it as sustainability engineering, the delivery, as chemical and biopharmaceutical delivery, and also the common entry delivery. So they have 3 different perspectives on it. So it was really interesting to ask them to look at this. But from their perspective, they wanted to keep, you can see there the bits that they wanted to keep, the teamwork or academic writing. And again, remember they're second and third year, so they might see more value in the academic writing now as they go up in the years. The other thing I have a picture of there is we have a business model canvas that as part of that module, the students can participate in, where they develop a business idea and effectively they sell it, similar to the Dragon's Den idea. And there are prizes, and one of the prizes is for embedding the SDGs into the project, or the focus on the SDGs. So they were concerned in moving this way that they might lose access to that business model canvas resource, really, an activity that they enjoy. The areas they reckon we should focus on was, you can see there, looking at green competencies, developing mindset, individual to global. And remember, some of that comes because being part of the project, they were looking at the green competencies that they wouldn't have necessarily previously. And then just to talk briefly a bit about, I'm going to focus here on the assessment types, because what was really interesting was they saw value in attending, but they also knew they couldn't give marks for attendance. So they want to spread the workload, we'll say, for the module throughout the semester, because they recognise that you can't embed sustainability if you don't get the students to engage, that you can embed it in the module all you want, but if you don't get the attendance and the engagement, it's not actually embedded. So that's why they were coming up with different types of assessments that would be held each week or every second week to help build that in. So I'm going to let the students speak for themselves now. So on the left here, we've Maura Sweeney.
Hi, my name is Maura Sweeney and I'm a second year chemical and biopharmaceutical engineering student. I joined this project as I already had an interest in sustainability, but I wanted to expand my knowledge in it, as well as learn more about how sustainability is important in industry. One of the highlights of this project was being able to be a facilitator for the Concern World Cafe. It was an amazing opportunity to be able to have eye-opening conversations with lecturers as well as students about sustainability. It was also a privilege to be able to have my say as a student in the design of a curriculum. It was also a fabulous opportunity to be able to collaborate with lecturers and students and to be able to see the amount of considerations that go into designing a module.
And this is Laura.
Hi everyone, I'm Laura and I'm a third year Sustainable Energy Engineering student. I think the module redesign has been a great idea to not only educate but also inspire students to take action. The redesigned module is a significant step forward in education for sustainability, and the work lecturers and students have done throughout the project will drive a meaningful change in MTU's curriculum. I was excited for the opportunity to join the CARES project to develop a first year module embedded around sustainability. As a Sustainable Energy Engineering student, I had a foundation in sustainability concepts, so I had the passion to join Aisling and Maria. I believe involving students in curriculum redesign is invaluable. I think their concepts and opinions are full of relevant perspectives, as the goal of the project is about educating students. It gives the students empowerment within their own college experience, and I think it creates a positive dynamic between lecturers and students.
Thank you. I pass you back to Aisling.
So we just wanted to share, I suppose part of the project is looking at best practice that's already out there and what tools can we use. And if we're looking at, embedding sustainable development in our curricula, what are people already doing that we could potentially use? So if you look at the panel on the left there, we started out looking at the work of Disha and Hargroves. They're based in Australia, and you can see the phases that they would recommend in terms of looking at your renewal of your curriculum. So you look at your strategy, you identify your attributes, as Niamh was saying earlier on, you map your learning pathways, you do your audit, and then you develop and update your course material and test it. And one of the reasons we looked at this idea of the common first year course was because, in the short term, that's something that you can do very quickly. If I move to the top panel on the right, then Engineering for One Planet is, I suppose, a learning objectives framework in the ESD space focused on engineering. And what they've done is they've taken the UNESCO and the Green Comp competencies and just reframe them in the engineering context. So you can see the wheel there where you've got your systems thinking in the middle, but very complementary as well. And you can see the vision, the goal and the approach there. So we want to transform engineering education so that we can protect and improve. And we want to be looking at our activities from design to end of life. And I suppose one thing we want to point out is that, with the things that we're showing you here today in terms of approaches, there's lots of resources that come with them, and you may even find that while they're engineering focused, they could be used in other contexts as well, and that's something we're going to explore throughout the project. The bottom one there is from the UK. It's the Reimagined Degree Map, and that was produced by Engineers Without Borders UK and the Royal Academy of Engineering, and it's aimed more at the programme ownership level, but at the same time, you could see it being used by the programme staff as well. So the other thing to highlight is what we're seeing across these different approaches is very much the utilisation of design thinking, and it makes sense really if you think about it. The empathy phase is, you're finding out the needs and wants of your stakeholders, then you're defining, where you are, where you want to be, that continuum that Niamh was talking about already. Then you've got your ideation phase in terms of, right, well, how can we change our approach, change what we're doing in the curriculum, and then you prototype and test, and you can have those internal recycles or iterations, between the phases, or you can go all the way to the end and come back around again. I wanted to highlight the University of Villanova. They took the Engineering for One Planet framework, and they, along with two other HEIs in the States, looked at, how could they bring in that framework at an institutional level. And there's loads of really good resources and questions and learning from their experience in trying to implement the framework. So I've just got one example there where you can see some of the dimensions they looked at. I haven't included everything, but you can see there we've got leadership and culture, strategic planning, student engagement. And again, you're going from the level of 0, where maybe you don't have a lot going on, and you're trying to transform or move yourselves along then to level 3, if you like, which is the transformative institution then, where you've got your leadership and culture that's driving change, that's active, your students are really empowered, collaborating, and there's lots of dialogue going on. If we move to the right hand side there with the reimagined degree map, the idea there is that you're looking at producing a globally responsible engineer. So you're looking at sustainability, ethics and inclusion, and you can see the phases there, A to F, very similar again. In terms of what I've just spoken about. And if we take C there, what do you want your degree to be? Where are you at? Again, you can see that continuum in the table there, going from ad hoc, where maybe you've got patchy coverage, to add-on, where maybe you've got standalone modules, but you're using your active learning, moving all the way then to the integrated core content, and the idea then of moving to continuous improvement. And then lastly, just to share, Higgins and Calvert, Higgins is from Ulster University and Calvert is from QUB. They've done some work and have collaborated with Advanced HE to produce a curriculum design toolkit quite recently. And it has all the usual phases in it that I've just spoken about. But what's really nice is you can use design thinking again with your fishbone diagram there on the left-hand side. You can do your mapping in terms of, first branch of my diagram there. What am I doing in week 1? What are my learning outcomes there? What's my assessment looking at? And you're looking at the 2 levels. You're looking at the sustainable development goals, but you're also looking at the competencies. So it's a nice way of mapping the two things together. And there's lots of frameworks there then as part of that toolkit that I would really recommend in terms of active learning. How do you frame all of that? And ultimately producing an action plan. So just to finish up, we just want to say our learning really is that when you're looking at renewing the curriculum in this space, it's as much about the process as it is content related. So we'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Maria. Thanks, Aisling. And it's great to see the student voice coming out, and it's really interesting to hear the students' perspective of what worked well in certain modules. And I think the students are right. I mean, they recognise as much as the staff do that we need to get the students engaged, but if the students aren't even turning up, how can we get them to engage? And that was a big takeaway. So yeah, marks for stuff and assessment in class to encourage that attendance is always very good. The next speaker we have today is Dr. Andrea Beckerdijk, who is looking at some of the healthy campus initiatives that we have here on campus. So Andrea, do you want to start off and kick off there?
It's wonderful to be here today. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I've learned a lot from the presentation so far. And it's striking that there are very real alignments, I think, between the areas, of course, of health, well-being, sustainable development, but even on a policy level, I'm hearing a lot of synergies between National Healthy Campus Policy and some of the terminology like systems thinking, adopting a university-wide approach. So there's some very real synergies there. My name is Andrea Beckerdijk. I'm a lecturer in health and wellbeing here at MTU, and along with my colleague, Dr. Cian O'Neill, I am also the academic co-lead of the university's Healthy Campus programme called A Healthy MTU. And I'm delighted to be here today on behalf of our whole university team to not only maybe highlight some local initiatives here at MTU, but also maybe to examine the societal impact that can be garnered from leveraging the magnitude of the university sector and university settings as settings for health, well-being and sustainable development. And as Niamh articulated already, that is no longer just a nice to have and so on. It's effectively sustainability, health, well-being underpin oftentimes the unique strategic vision of organisations, of the sector, and that is reflected, as Niamh alluded to, within the MTU strategic plan that specifically embraces education for sustainable development. As you'll all know, health and well-being is explicit within the complement of UN Sustainable Development Goals, and really capturing health and well-being as a critical resource for societal development, but really visually depicting how intricately associated health and well-being is with societal equity, and particularly, and often more so than we realise, with planetary and economic ecosystems. And so those concepts are uniquely and intricately related. You might be wondering why I'm depicting this image, but in population health and in public health, we often examine population health metrics and markers, and we look at data and so on. But what we try to do within our research group and within our academic programs in health and well-being is we try to adopt an ecological perspective where we consider health and well-being as a complex construct dependent on both individual level factors, but of course broader environmental factors too. And there's a very famous kind of frogs in a pond analogy that's often used to reflect this perspective, whereby it's said that if the frogs in a pond started behaving strangely, the first intuitive reaction might not be to even immediately treat the frogs, but to actually wonder what's going on in that broader pond. So I think it's a good analogy for what we need to do in terms of health, well-being and sustainable development, adopting that ecological perspective and approach. In terms of the cost and complexity of societal health challenges, the figures speak for themselves in terms of the economic costs and so on. But the complexity of those challenges is intricately associated, as we all know, with the global climate crisis and so on. And so global and national policies consistently advocate for cohesive cross-sectoral actions. And in the area of health promotion, there's a shift towards adopting a settings-based approach, focusing on reorientating key settings across society, our schools, our cities, our communities, and of course universities, so that they enable health and well-being by design, and as Niamh said earlier, not just a box ticking exercise, but by the very core business of what they do. And the concept of a healthy university is well developed. It's enshrined now in some global policy documents and also national policies, which I'll return to in a moment. But just very simply to articulate that these concepts, health, well-being, sustainability, how intricately related they are and how bidirectional that path can be. We know that overarching population health risk is dependent on, of course, individual level vulnerability and individual level risk factors, exposure to certain settings and systems, but of course very real and increasing climate related hazards that all combine to result in collectively population health related outcomes, everything from heat related illness, respiratory conditions and so on. But collectively, those outcomes then placing a substantial burden on our health systems and facilities. And health systems in turn then creating and contributing substantially to greenhouse gas emissions and so on. And I was recently reading a literature review on this that outlined that in certain countries, healthcare comes only after transport, construction and energy sectors in terms of its collective contributions to greenhouse emissions. And I was really, really struck by that and by how intricately connected everything is, and how there's a collective societal need to address and to try to reduce the overarching demand on global healthcare systems and facilities. In terms of health promotion and in terms of advocating for health promoting campuses or health healthy universities, the terminology can be interchangeable. But there is a global network, global communities of practice. In turn, continental networks are affiliated and national networks. And as you can see, the HEA and colleagues who are driving the Healthy Campus agenda within the HEA have positioned Ireland very much to the forefront within this global network of practice. Over the last 5 years or so, there have been accelerations in policy and developments and so on, particularly with the rollout of the Healthy Campus Charter and framework that has been committed to by HEIs in Ireland. And what that framework advocates is, as Niamh was saying in her presentation earlier, a whole campus approach to health and well-being, and really reflecting on all of the different levels and layers of the university to question how health and well-being might be integrated, within the culture and within the habitual operations. So not as an add-on, but that it's actually embedded within the organisation. And that can range from leadership, culture, student and staff needs, and of course, as I've highlighted in bold there, the campus environment, both the physical environment, the virtual environment, but of course, the curricular environment as well. And more recently, the HEA funded a 4-partner consortium, of which MTU is proud to be part of, under the leadership of Professor Catherine Darker and her team in Trinity, but to develop a national, and it's now been launched, to develop a national self-evaluation tool that's available now to all HEIs in the sector, to reflect at a local level on the implementation of that Healthy Campus framework. And that tool really acknowledges the alignment in terms of health, well-being, and of course the UN SDGs. But in particular, without going into too much detail, requires HEIs to reflect on certain areas such as sustainability practices within buildings, within campus operations, but in particular within campus food environments. So looking at how foods are sourced, are they healthy, are they sustainable, and so on. So again, even at policy level, it's great to see that integrative approach and ethos. At MTU, so as I mentioned, a Healthy MTU is our university's Healthy Campus programme. It's a multi-campus health promotion initiative, and we often perceive it as a 2-pillared entity. So as you can see on the right-hand side, the initiative actually implementing the Healthy Campus framework at whole university level. But we've also integrated it within the research and innovation ecosystem of the university. So there is a designated aligned research strategy that has been integrated within a broader research group entity at the university. And for sustainability, in terms of sustainability of action and so on, and integrating into core business, that has been quite advantageous for us too, in terms of building research capacity. In terms of the implementation side, so you can see we have an implementation team largely supported by the HEA's Technological Sector Advancement Fund, but integrating initiatives within the curriculum is a core focus of what we aim to do. And we have a number of examples over the past couple of years of ESD within the curriculum. So as you can see here, Project STEPS is a student-led recreational walking intervention. It has also been part of an aligned research project as well, but it has been integrated both at level 8 and level 9 across multiple programs and modules in the university. And it really leverages recreational walking in terms of active transport, in terms of its health enhancing benefits, and as you can see there, in terms of utilising green spaces, blue economy, and so on. So that has been a flagship initiative for us. Similarly, more recently, students on a Bachelor of Science programme in Coaching Science and Sports Pedagogy designed and delivered an adapted physical activity programme for older adults in the community. So a really nice partnership piece, I think, to advance the UN SDGs from that perspective, and we hope that that will continue to be integrated as an experiential assignment as well. And in terms of connection and belonging, our Kerry campus lead, Siobhan Griffin, implemented this year an ESD initiative that involved a field trip. So it involved Year 1 Health and Leisure students, and on World Mental Health Day, they engaged in a field trip trip to Phoenix, as you can see on the right-hand side there, and engaged in activities that enhance well-being, such as cold water immersion, recreational walking, exploring the newly developed Greenway, and really exploring the UN SDGs whilst doing so. And from a health and well-being perspective, then there was really positive feedback of that initiative as a well-being enhancing initiative as well. And more broadly speaking, our programme implements an array of events and so on throughout the academic year. If you look at the top right, we aim to focus on upskilling students in terms of cooking skills, in terms of food preparation, trying to minimise food waste, and really exhibiting, and as you can see there, that's a cooking demonstration event, exhibiting cost-effective, healthy, sustainable recipes, and trying to build that skill set and capacity moving forward. Just to come back, just to conclude with reference to some of our research activities. So we've tried to integrate ESD also within our research curricula. Our research lab is emerging, and we are continuing to gather data to evaluate what we do and to try to measure the impact of what we do. That's involved national and EU consortia. But one current postgraduate research project that might be of interest today relates to exploring and examining nutrition and dietary metrics amongst our student cohort, but in particular an empirical study as part of that work that data analysis is currently ongoing, but has explored the university food environment and has conducted a comprehensive assessment of that using a validated tool and using mixed methods data analysis. And essentially what we hope to be able to explore is how healthy, how equitable and how environmentally sustainable that food environment collectively is. And that has been done in partnership with key campus stakeholders in that regard. So we hope to disseminate those findings in the near future. In summary, just to conclude, again, to reinforce the alignment between health, well-being and sustainable development, they are key enablers of sectoral and institutional priorities. And just to state as well, and to conclude on this, that universities are really unique intervention settings, not only in terms of public health, but in terms of being pragmatic settings because of their magnitude. I believe in excess of 265,000 students enrolments at the most recent academic year in this country. At EU level, there's a metric that's often thrown out that the collective population of tertiary education students exceeds the population of London and New York combined. So cohesive action at policy level can really reach substantial cohorts in the population. And then finally, similarly to, I think, the ethos of Niamh's presentation earlier, when we try to integrate and embed health and well-being, we try to ensure that it can be baked in and actually become part of the core business of what we do and not necessarily just bolted on in the short term. So I think that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions afterwards, and thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. And I think we're starting to see that the full policy of the university-wide approach kind of coming along, because we're very aware of the Healthy Campus initiative. So like even during Green Campus Week, different programs like I took one of our students doing environmental stewardship, which is basically doing a lovely campus walk while also doing a litter pick going down by the river and explaining then how this river, this waste can end up in the river, and talking about SDG number 14. So it's seeing all the different strands across the university come together. So thanks for that, Andrea. Our next speaker that we have up today is Lisa. So Lisa, do you want to share your screen there?
It's fantastic to see all that's happening at MTU. I'm delighted to be here. I'm Lisa Zimmerman. I'm an assistant lecturer in visual communications at MTU in Bishopstown. I've studied sustainability principles and how they can be applied in my industry of visual communication design through 3 masters so far. But my research is very much industry focused. So what I'm presenting today is how I currently try to implement sustainability considerations into the modules that I teach. There's a plethora of frameworks and toolkits available, and there are constantly new ones being developed, but finding and applying those generally takes some time, although we've heard approaches of implementing frameworks more rapidly. But generally, that's been my experience, that selecting the right framework and implementing it does take some time. In addition to that, the role of the framework is to be holistic, to address the big picture and to encourage systems change. And on a program or course level, this is not only helpful, but likely necessary, as we do need a roadmap to tackle a task as complex as changing what and how we teach. But I do think that frameworks don't necessarily help us apply sustainability thinking in practice. I probably do have to make a distinction between sectors and industries, as there certainly are large differences between industries that have been regulated for decades and industries that aren't regulated and are only starting to implement sustainability policies. There aren't any legal sustainability reporting or policy requirements as of yet in the industry that corresponds to the discipline that I teach, which means that at the moment, there's no consensus on or guidance on what applying sustainability everyday decision making in this industry actually looks like. So just to exemplify that, I'm gonna go through a mini case study of what the decision making process in visual communications actually looks like. So starting off with a typical design problem, you don't necessarily have to read that, there's going to be a map following. I tried to map out some of the decision variables that we are concerned with in our discipline and their interconnections. And at the next slide now, I'm going to add some sustainability considerations. And this is not even a conclusive list. This is just me trying to map out, what would we actually have to consider here, like adding that additional layer of sustainability considerations into the everyday decision making. So in conclusion, these are very unique variables to this one sector or profession. And while some of it is certainly transferable to other disciplines, especially when it comes to use of technology, the wide range of variables leads to a high level of complexity. And as part of their future jobs, our students have to make decisions on how communication happens to begin with. So whether that's digital, print, something else altogether. We cannot discuss all sustainability variables while we teach. We need to instill sustainability thinking skills. But I don't think we can do this effectively through global level problem solving by looking at the SDGs, for example. Just from my personal experience, I found that that is a bit too broad of problem solving skill level. Also very important, but does that really help students make those granular level everyday decisions with sustainability considerations? That was kind of my problem. So it does need to be more specific so designers don't neglect the direct impact of what they produce in industry on a daily basis. So in order to tackle this conundrum, I tried to figure out what the sustainable design skill parameters are. So which specific skills in order to make sustainability considerations in everyday decision making as a designer. To me, those are three things. For one, it's responsibility, so teaching the awareness of the impact on wider society and environment, and then workplace responsibilities, educating others and oneself. Then another parameter would be awareness for materiality, which is particularly complex in our field because we're working with a very, very wide range of tools for communication. And as I said, that's digital or print or something else. So it's not very specific. Yeah. And then lastly, the third kind of parameter would be applying user experience principles. So this is another field of design very related to visual communications. But I think there should be a more crossover because the fields can learn from each other. So just as an overview, it's responsibility, materiality, and UX principles that I've identified are the key skills for sustainable decision making in my discipline. And the way I currently try to implement those in my teaching, I just try to figure out, there's different ways basically that I'm trying to bring those in. The paper that I've linked on the left-hand side is a fantastic paper from my colleague, Dr. Gwen Lettis. She developed a process which I highly recommend to any design educators that might be listening, or educators in generally. Gwen currently uses this process to teach our students the responsibilities of a designer, but through them identifying their own values. The way I brought in the awareness for materiality into my teaching is by tweaking my project briefs. Generally in visual communications, we work with design briefs. So it's continuous assessment. So I'm not sure if that applies to other disciplines so much, but in my case, it worked out quite well. And then to bring UX principles into my teaching, I redesigned exercises to help students identify more meaningful means of communication. And just as a conclusion, finding these discipline-specific parameters has helped me, first of all, to omit the term sustainability, which I found in teaching to be quite important. There might be other instances when it's important to mention the term and to clarify what it means, but I wanted to make sure that my students understand and get the sustainability thinking concept across. I think the term sustainability is not necessarily conclusively defined, and it can be too overwhelming to tackle. So helping, like finding out what those parameters are, helped me omit the term in teaching. It also helps encourage discussion on the value of what we do as designers. And most importantly, I think it exemplifies sustainable decision-making in practice by integrating it in existing projects. So I think specific projects around sustainability are invaluable, but it can sometimes lack skill transferability. And systemic change in course and curriculum design is also incredibly important, but it can take time. So hence, do I propose that in addition to a top-down approach, which I consider curriculum restructure, policy design, applying frameworks on program level, I propose a complementary approach of implementing sustainability in teaching bottom up, which I try to visualize here. And it's supposed to look a bit squiggly. So this is using design thinking methods, using an iterative experimental design thinking approach to identify sustainability indicators in the decision-making relevant to the project, brief, or discipline. Design thinking is a lot of different things, and there are, of course, structures to it as well, and different processes that one can use. But generally, what I'm hinting at here is that it is iterative and experimental. I think that's necessary for implementing sustainability into teaching on a granular, on a module or brief level, because sustainability is highly complex. And as a science, it's interdisciplinary and highly interdependent. I therefore like to think about sustainability thinking as a skill that we need to acquire. And from my past research, I conclude that sustainability thinking means systems thinking plus industry-specific knowledge. I don't think that I needed my 10 years of research to find these indicators. It was really just like an iterative approach, work in progress. And I'm also not saying that this is definite or anything, but it's an experimental, iterative approach of trying to implement sustainability into my teaching. And I think, yeah, what I'm trying to get across here is that it doesn't need for anyone to be a sustainability expert to implement sustainability into the teaching, but rather the confidence in knowing that the profession or discipline related to what we're teaching is about, and what the everyday decision-making looks like. I think that's the most important key thing, because only if we know what the everyday decisions that our students are going to make in the future, if we know those, that's when we can intervene and add that sustainability consideration layer. And I think we often miss is that sustainable development is a process in itself and needs to be constantly evolving. And the granular changes are as important as the big systemic changes, whether in curriculum design or in industry. So just in conclusion now, in addition to the top-down interventions on program, course, or module redesign, I think we also need to have a bottom-up approach of integrating sustainability thinking into what we already teach through exemplified application of sustainability thinking in the decision making that we already ask of our students. Ooh, and I have 9 seconds to spare. But it's my background. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Lisa. And I think you're right that unless the students know where the decisions are going to be making, they don't know how sustainability fits in with their curriculum, you know. So it's great to kind of get that systems thinking in, because once they know where the different choices and decisions have to be made, they know they're the key points that they can step in and start looking at sustainability. So that concludes all of our speakers for today from an MTU perspective. I see Mark there is nodding away, so I'm sure Mark is going to lead out on our questions and answer session there. So I'll pass it back to you, Mark.
Thanks, Niamh, and thanks everyone. That was fantastic. Lots of different things. We don't have a huge amount of time, but I just want to field one question that was put in the chat there about sort of aligning all the work that's going on in MTU to the ESD 2030 strategy. So I just highlighted that every institution has submitted their progress reports, and that will be available from the department in the coming months, the second progress report on ESD to 2030, where all of these activities are mapped against those categories in the document. That's just for general knowledge for people. So if you look at that document as well, Mark, I mean, a lot of what we're talking about, I mean, if you look at area 3.2, it talks about, you know, embedding it within the curriculum and programs. And in MTU, like, we've put in the policies and the procedures in the curriculum framework, we've put in the policies and procedures to ensure that it's not done on an ad hoc basis, that it's done across the university and university-wide approach. So, and it is a journey, you know, so as we go along and more programs and undergo the faculty enhancement review process, we should see further and further embedding. Like, we're only part of the way along the journey. So, like everyone else. That's what I like about the MTU approach. You have the sort of structured, I think, putting it in, obviously you have your strategic plan, sustainability strategy, but actually putting it into the program review documentation and linking it to quality enhancement and improvement is really smart. And then also leaving space, as Lisa mentioned, for the messiness and experimentation of a ground up sort of level as well. I just have a question for Maria, especially on their presentation, and Aisling. Like, it struck me during the week, we were lucky enough to have Alex Ryan over doing workshops for the HEA, and she said something about moving students from the idea that they become campaigners to actually educators. And I'm like, that's very relevant to what you did in your project. I'm just wondering, like, what have you learned from the students as part of this process?
That they want to do it, actually. You're dead right, that they're quite keen to do it. And I suppose I would see them being part of our team and our role as learning how to facilitate and scaffold that. And like, I suppose we would see that as core to education for sustainable development anyway. But, and I think this has come across in many of the presentations I've been at, both on the digital badges and through these spotlight series as well, how to go about doing that and how to help facilitate students to be all that they can be as activists in it and as educators. Because I suppose particularly in our disciplines, that whole idea of education is really important to us in their role as graduates anyway, that not do they do the CPD, but they're also educating others as much as they can anyway.
Yeah, no, that's great. And just a question for Andrea, maybe to finish, because it's the big question, really. Like you mentioned a number of times, synergy, but the whole idea of healthy campus, healthy well-being, sustainability as a culture, and that university sector or higher education sector embodies this, not just embeds it. If you have any sort of final thoughts on that, maybe.
I think my thought on that is there's been a real acceleration in progress. And as Niamh said, it's a journey and there's a way to go. But actually, I feel quite energized by the progress in the last 3 to 5 years. So I remember I would have been part of kind of the initial group nationally that would have sat in a room and started out brainstorming what would a healthy campus framework look like in this country, what do we need? And that would have been under the remit of kind of Healthy Ireland and Department of Health discussions at that time. So it was very much residing in health. But what was really positive, and I think has accelerated momentum hugely is that then, in alignment with our kind of national health strategy, that was then integrated directly within the sector. So the Healthy Campus movement moved directly within the HEA, and it's now directly within the sector. So it's no longer just a kind of a nice addition, it's actually part of the sectoral priorities and strategies. And I think from there then, you know, things have progressed. So I would say it needs to be, everything needs to be embedded within the core sector. So the health system and Department of Health can only do so much. It needs to be that whole of government approach. And I think that's a good example of that, because the progress in the last 3 to 5 years has been huge, and the buy-in, I think, in the sector.
Yeah, and a big shout out to Caroline and Kirsten
Yes,
in the HEA,
and Ross,
and Ross, who are leading that.
Yeah.
So that's great work.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we're coming up to just over 2 o'clock, so we might sort of finish up. So just a sincere thank you to everyone in MTU for that fantastic set of presentations and taking the time to prepare and present today. Just for people on the call, you know, if there's still registration is continuously open at the links provided there. As I mentioned in the beginning, the session is recorded, will be available. The open call for case studies is still open, so I'd encourage people to start submitting those. Some of those case studies already submitted are going to go live in the next couple of weeks, so you'll be able to see them. And we've also an open educational resources call. And the last thing is next week we have the National College of Art and Design, so really looking forward to that as well. So thanks for everyone for attending today, and again thanks to all the MTU speakers for contributing to the series. So have a nice weekend, everybody.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.